I think or I thought, at least even 20 years ago when I started to work internationally, that there was this, in my head, some weird idea of good guys, some idea of those, whether it be certain countries or certain peoples. Maybe it was this holdover from World War II and this thought that this was like, so that the lines were clearer and that there was going to be these human rights goals laid out and that there would be things stood up for, and that if these things weren't done, there would be pushback. And these were and I really thought that's what it was. I even thought that's what the United Nations was. I thought, okay, there's some lines in the sand, there's some understanding, and we're going to grow and fight for improvements in these areas. And to watch and understand more and more how it's just simply, that's not what it is. That's not the world. The world is not, these are human rights. It is, these are human rights, sometimes for these people, maybe sometimes for these people, never for these people. Yeah. It's food aid, 6% for these people, 50% for these people. It's justice for these people, but not these people. Accountability for this crime, but not that crime if there's business interest. And this is truly the ugly state of so much of the world that we are just becoming more and more aware of. It's really disheartening. It's really upsetting.
System malfunction. System malfunction.
What is happening, YouTube? Thank you all for stopping by again. I really appreciate it. I have noticed lately, in looking at the back-end analytics, that there is a lot of people coming to the channel, and I thank you for that. There's a ton of watchers and listeners hanging out in the shadows, and that's okay, as long as you're enjoying the content. But if you can just please do me a favor, as this helps my channel and encourages YouTube to share it out to many more people. If you can come in and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you find interest in the topics that we discuss, please share it out to your friends and family, because I would imagine that there's some like interest there. Now, as it relates to this post where Angelina Jolie, who is a very famous actress, has come to the conclusion that the world isn't fair, my question is, how could she think that? With all the money and fame that she has, I'm sure that she's had the opportunity to cover vast parts of the world, interact with many different cultures and societies, and it would be easy for her to see that, easy for her to recognize that these countries are extremely poor and these countries are considered very wealthy, or first world versus third world. But even with covering all that ground and engaging with all these different peoples and cultures around the world, her mind has still been trapped in a matrix. And I would imagine that everyone in her circle, that Hollywood world, is all trapped in that mental delusion. They really can't see the world for what it is. They're not having to survive or exist in a world where injustice is just like the air you breathe. It's omnipresent. It never goes away. It is part of your very existence. Most people who don't have this type of privilege recognize the unfairness. I mean, whether that is your socioeconomic class, right, where you live, the grocery stores in which you can and cannot shop at, your access to nutritional, healthy, whole foods, how much crime is in your neighborhood, or how much crime is allowed to exist in your neighborhood. I would argue that most of Americans and most of the world at large knows that the world isn't unfair. They recognize that the power lies within a small group of people, and they're going to do everything they can to make sure that they maintain that power. I'm glad that this woman's eyes are open and that she is able to get a glimpse of true reality. I mean, you can clearly look at the disparity. If I was to go punch someone in the streets, I'm probably gonna have to go face a judge or jury of my peers and go through the whole entire criminal justice process. But contrastly, look at what's going on over in Palestine. There's been more than 25,000 people deleted in a genocide, according to the ICJ, and no one's been arrested. No one's standing in front of a judge or sitting in a jail cell waiting for their trial. trial. I mean, that's just one example. I mean, the United States went over into many countries and disrupted their political structures because it didn't agree with us. And the amount of people that lost their lives in those interactions is astronomical. But again, none of our politicians are standing before a judge or a trial and answering to war crimes. It just depends on who they decide needs to go through the gauntlet and who doesn't. If you have power, if you have influence, if you're part of the inner circle, then you can easily dodge a lot of that criticism, and they'll do a fantastic job of making sure that it doesn't get out to the public. Just like Angelina Jolie, a lot of what the world really is hasn't penetrated her brain, because the circles that she moves in and the people who are in and around her, they go through tremendous efforts not to have to look at the world without the filters and all the made up glorious stories of nationalism and European exceptionalism. All in all, I mean, this is good for her. Now she's aware of it, but at the same time, this could be a curse, because once the filters are removed and you start seeing reality, you can't unsee it. And so what starts to happen is there's just more questions that develop in your mind of why. And then you realize you don't have that much power to affect that much change. So the anger just festers within you. And that's enough to take off multiple years of one's life. No one needs that stress, but that's what will happen. And who knows? Maybe she will utilize her platform to speak out more. That's going to come with alienation from her own community, right? Because these people, just like her, couldn't see the world for what it really is. I mean, if anybody really wants to see the difference, I don't think you have to look at any of these international government agencies and look at how they're treating different countries. You can just look within, right here in the United States of America. All you have to do is find your closest economically deprived neighborhoods, or ghetto as they're called, or the hoods, and just go sit at the local gas station for a few hours and look at the energy in and around there. Observe the grocery store selections. Maybe pop into one of the grocery stores and look at the produce. Does it look different than the produce that you get at your grocery store? Look at the gas stations. What tier gas do they have access to? What restaurants are in and around their communities? Is it all fried fast food where nothing's healthy? Look at the schools. Look at the kids that are walking home from school. Look at the parents that are picking their kids up from school. Look at the cars that are in and around these communities. Do they look like they may break down any given Wednesday? How about the infrastructure? Are there potholes all in the streets? Are they paved well, or do they look like they get regularly serviced throughout the year? Observe the expressions on the people who live in this type of community have on their faces. You can clearly see it. Take a look at where people are going to work. Is it right there in their community so that the dollar magnifies within that community? Or are these people having to jump on public transit, or have someone of their family members drop them off at their place of employment, which is probably miles away from where they live? It's the same for what they do on their weekends. They're not going to probably spend the weekend where they live. If you're in Southern California, everybody heads to the beach. If you've been to the beach towns, you know that these are very affluent communities. So the people who are coming from these inland areas or these economically deprived areas are deciding to come to the beach Saturday, Sunday, and spend their money in those areas, which only boosts up the tax revenue for those already affluent areas. It's a very sinister situation, and most people just can't see past the filter. And then others are more comfortable living in and underneath that filter.
System malfunction.